Kornacki, please come on the platform. Come on, give the Lord a mighty hand of praise for a miracle. Back in 1980, I went to preach for Tommy Reed in Buffalo, New York. There was a lady in that service, a witch at the time, and today she's a preacher. So come on, give the Lord a mighty hand for his mighty power. Carol, take your seats, please. Tell the people in a few minutes what God has done for you.
I'll do it. Thank you, Pastor. I came from a family, a household of 10 children where there was very little food. My mother was into spiritualism and a very violent woman. My father was mentally ill. When we were in bed at night, he would start the house on fire. Many a nights I remember lying on the bunk bed and hearing him rape my sister on the top bunk. When I told someone what was happening, I was given a beating. When I began to be molested and I told, I was given a beating, so I learned to keep my mouth shut. I had fevers when I was a child. They used to run about 103. And because there were 10 children and we were all put in one bed, we would urinate on one another to keep warm because it was so cold. So when I would go to my mother and say, I'm hot, Mom, I need a drink of water, I have a fever, she would say, you're not allowed to drink water past 6 o'clock in the evening. So I would go into the bathroom and flush the toilet and kneel down next to the toilet and lap the water out of the toilet. I got hepatitis A from it, and it damaged my liver. In this house of violence and sexual abuse, there was always an edge of spiritualism. My mother liked to go off to psychics, to necromancers. Necromancy is communicating with the dead. Very popular right now. Very big, be careful. And my mother would bring back these spiritualists, and they would read cards in our home and bring those spirits in the home. By the time I was 22 years old, I had 3 abortions. When they refused me an abortion, I threw myself down 31 concrete stairs and was put into a mental institution because I would endanger my own life. They put me in a mental institution and they locked me in a room. They wouldn't let anybody near me because I would act like a cat. I would hide, and when the nurses would come in to bring me a liquid diet, because by this time I had hepatitis B from dirty needles from shooting heroin. So in this mental institution, the nurses were afraid of me. And I would hide behind the door because I was behind a big metal door. And they'd open that door, clink, clink, to bring in my food. And I would screech and come at them and try to hurt them. So they would tie me up. They let me out of the mental institution, and I began to shoot heroin, snort cocaine. 3 times I OD'd and turned blue. And so I thought, well, you know what? I'll get into witchcraft. I'll get into being a witch. I'll study Buddhism, New Age philosophy, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, reincarnation. All that has become very popular now. And I began to study it intently. I put everything into it. Even in the times when I was sitting there with a needle in my arm, I'd have my witchcraft books open. And let me tell you something about the devil. You give him an inch, he'll take 10 feet. And you don't have to ask him for demons. They come and invite themselves. You mess with the devil, he will wipe the floor with you. But I thought it was cool. I began to communicate with familiar spirits that I thought were departed spirits of loved ones. I began to get into reading of tarot cards and playing cards. I began to sit in rooms and make salt circles with human skulls in the middle and put a candle in it. And I'd sit there with a deck of cards and read people's past, present, and future. I thought I was the best thing since sliced bread. Now I felt like I had confidence. God had to be in this, I told myself. Where would I get this information? And so then I would turn around and start to invite spirits in. Spirit guides to guide me. So I took on 11 devils. I thought they were wonderful spirits. Opened myself up. I would astral project. I was working toward metamorphosis, to change from one thing to another. I was operating in strong demonic power. People were afraid of me. I would walk in a room and read people's mail, tell them you're committing adultery, you're stealing on the job, you're a homosexual. And I thought it was fun because when you hang around with the devil, you act like the devil. One day, I found out that the same spirits that gave me power tormented me. And I would lay in bed at night, and when at one time I wasn't afraid of the dark, now I was totally afraid of it. You see, they give you the power, but you pay the price. And I'd be in horrible fear in my bed. And I'd wake up in cold sweats, and I'd see spirits crying at me. And I thought, you're supposed to be my friend. And then one day the doctor called. He said, Carol is a drug addict. Drug addicts die. Carol is addicted to drugs. The needle marks are obvious when we're drawing blood. She has hepatitis B. Let me tell you what that is. She's already had A, and that's not good. This is a hepatitis that will kill you. We have nothing at the time to give to her to help her. She's going to die. I would walk into a room and I would gargle demons and just stand there and gargle. I would speak to animals to cause their little hearts to stop and die. And in this condition, dying, mentally ill, body and mind and emotions scarred, most people looked over and said, she's a useless piece of trash. I'd walk the streets and the police would pick me up and lock me up so nobody'd rape me and kill me. I'd walk around with guns in my mouth. Suicide is at epidemic level right now, ladies and gentlemen. And I'd suck on metal waiting to blow the top of my head off. And one day, a young woman who did more than warmed a pew in Buffalo, New York said, if I can introduce her to Jesus Christ, if I can get her to one of these crusades where God is moving and setting the captive free and opening the eyes of the blind and healing the brokenhearted, if I can just get her to one of these crusades, I know Jesus will touch her. She's met men who use her and abuse her. But I'll introduce her to a man who don't use you, don't abuse you, and don't throw you away when they're done with you. I know a man, she said, named Jesus. She said, there's a gentleman coming to the church, big church in Buffalo. She says, his name is Benny Hinn. She says, he's a unique gentleman, and I think that you will relate to him. I think you should go. He doesn't judge anyone in the congregation. I sat in the back. The place was packed, standing room only. People were waiting for hours. And the gentleman came out, the evangelist, Pastor Hinn, and he started talking about the Holy Ghost. And I thought, oh, wow, I'm in the right place to passing out ghosts here. I could use another one. But he talked about a man named Jesus. And he said, if you have sickness in your body, come down here. And when I came down the aisle, out of his peripheral vision, he spotted me. There were demons in me. I was growling. My clothing were very lewd. And he said, bring her up here. And I came up there. A demon-possessed, drug addict, street-walking, dying witch. And he said to me, what is the condition of your body? And I said, I have hepatitis B. And he said, what is that? And I said, I'm dying. And he said, do you believe Jesus can heal you? I didn't know he was a dead man on a cross. You see, I never met the resurrected Lord, but I was about to. I remember the gentleman, Pastor Benny Hinn, putting his hands up. This is all he said. Church, pray. And thousands of people stood to their feet. And he looked at me and he lifted his hands and he said, Jesus, oh Jesus, heal her. And the power of God came down on that broken, abused, emotionally disturbed, suicidal, demon-possessed, lost, dying human being, and surged through my body like electricity. Every circuit in me let loose. If you ever question the power of God of people laying down here, come on up and find out. That power went through me. I hit the floor, and I heard Pastor Betty say, don't touch her. God is doing something here. And for moments I laid there, and for the first time in my life, I heard a voice say to me, a voice I'd never heard before. My name is Jesus Christ. And if you're looking for love, Carol, you have found it. I love you just the way you are. And when I get up off that floor and I went to Dr. Skolnick, they drew blood. They said, you have no hepatitis B. I was healed of mental illness. Demons came out of me screaming. I spit them out. I vomited them out. The only spirit in me is the Holy Ghost. And as long as there's a breath left in me, I'm going to tell people that Jesus is alive.
Somebody shout hallelujah! Remain standing, please.